All right, joining me now. Very happy to have him back. Second appearance here on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. A lot to go through here because he is the president of ESPN. He is Burke Magnus. Burke, happy Thanksgiving. How are you?
Great. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Love this week. One of my favorite weeks of the year. So happy to be with you.
About 10 seconds before we jumped on this, I got an ESPN release that you're doing a triple header the day before Thanksgiving on Wednesday with a 5 o'clock NBA game on a Wednesday. I like that. That's always good. I don't know, but do you play a part in that decision with the NBA, or is that all the NBA? How does that work?
That's the programming team with the NBA on from a scheduling perspective. But my guess is that that day is not literally a holiday, but I think there's so many people off or available to do that where the normal, rules of the road, can be a little bit more flexible. Same with the day after Thanksgiving, obviously, which is
Right.
a holiday for a lot of companies anyway.
Well, since I mentioned that, we'll start with the NBA quickly because I don't have a ton to do on the NBA. Curious, let's start with inside the NBA.
Yeah.
It was months and months and months of people saying the show was going to be different. And about 5 minutes after the first show on opening night, everyone seemed to have calmed down and that whole thing sort of died. Was it frustrating to you that people did not believe you guys were not going to touch the show? Because I think just, again, we live in this time now where no one cares about what the facts are, but the facts are that TNT is still producing the show. It's still being produced in Atlanta. You guys are licensing the show just to air it. No one seemed to care about that. I got frustrated as someone who covers this. I don't know. I would be curious to know what your take on that was.
Yeah. I was pretty frustrated just because I was the one trying to assure people that we weren't going to change it. And
Right.
I get it. I mean, I at the end of the day, I think it was just such an unconventional situation across the board in terms of how it even came to be that I think people's minds went to the worst possible outcome. But I knew that I knew once the switch was flipped on that first night, and I was down in Atlanta. I wasn't going to miss that one, being in person down there with the team from Turner. I knew it wasn't even for me after the first episode. It was like after the first 15 minutes, as I was looking at X, people were like, "Oh, thank goodness,"
Right.
and
Right.
and so yeah, it was frustrating, but I knew that it would be resolved quickly.
How does it work exactly so people know? Do you guys have zero input into the show? Can you make suggestions? I mean, we saw a little bit of crossover ESPN stuff where they did the bit about talking about the Cowboys and sort of that whole thing.
Yeah.
And they did the great bit on that first show with Charles on doing all the ESPN shows. Can ESPN suggest or ask, or is it hands off?
No, it's collaborative. I mean, there's no document that details any of this. It's not a situation like that. It's really just the trust that the teams have in each other, which will grow over time, both from a talent perspective and a production perspective. We Tim Kiley we know really well. Down at Turner. Tim Corrigan for us. Mike McQuaid, the three of us were all down there for the first show. The guys have been down several more times. Just trying to establish that working relationship that could be collaborative and I know that that's what will develop over time. But again, the heart, the essence, the DNA of the show is, from our perspective, is exactly what it's always been, and that's what we wanted to project.
Yeah. Last thing on inside the NBA, I'm just curious. One of the things that did come up with it is the scheduling. I guess the guys we're going to see those guys a little sparingly until the
Yeah.
second half of the season, especially postseason and playoffs. What I'm curious about is just like, okay, so for instance, like last week, you guys had, I guess, a Wednesday night schedule. It was your new NBA countdown crew with Malika Andrews and Michael Malone and Shams, and why isn't that an inside the NBA night? Like, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so this actually is where a piece of paper kind of rules the roost, which is there's a certain number of times we can schedule inside the NBA over the course of the NBA season. There's also a provision that called for the vast majority of them to be after January 1st, which I'm not entirely sure what was behind that from a Turner perspective, but nonetheless, I'm pretty confident that that once we get through this first season, that's a conversation that we're going to be able to have that will allow for more flexibility, more regularity throughout the season from beginning to end. Again, put it in the column of like we had to get up and running. We have to establish this trust between the two sides, which I think is coming really quickly. And then I think that will be fertile ground for conversation, for next season. But I do appreciate, and I want everyone to know that we do recognize that that's an imperfect situation from our perspective. We would rather have it be more regular throughout the season. So if that's, getting the ability to do it more than the contract says in terms of the total amount of episodes, or whether it's to take the ones that we have and spread them more evenly over the course of the season, those are two ways we could go at it. But that's something that we will get into for next year. I'm positive.
Gotcha. I like that. Last thing here on just the ESPN NBA coverage. You made the change. Obviously, you put Tim Legler in that number one booth with Breen and Richard Jefferson, replacing Doris. My question just is why is this one? Why does it always have to be a 3-person booth? Do you consider a 2-person booth? I'm not looking for anyone to lose jobs, but I'm fascinated by networks across the board and their obsession with 3-person booths, especially in a sport like basketball where the analysts don't get a ton of time to talk.
It doesn't have to be a 3-person booth in my estimation. These things are so subjective. Like one of the number one things I've come to have a real appreciation for since I've had this role is just how subjective issues around talent are. In this instance, we really believe that, that the promise that Breen and Jefferson had showed in last year's work merited keeping those two guys together, but also, adding, Tim to the mix. Listen, Tim is, and by the way, I lest I jinx myself, I'll knock on wood here, but we're off to an incredible start so far. I think it actually is a great pairing. They're going to work every single time together. We're not doing nearly as much, or I think any different combinations throughout the regular season like we did last year. We want that team to have as many reps as they can possibly get on big games prior to the postseason, because they're going to call, the postseason, the conference finals and the finals together. So, off to a great start. But definitely not married to 3-person as a rule in the NBA or anything else for that matter. In fact, we rarely do it anywhere else. At
baseball,
at this moment in time. Yeah. Right. Yeah. MLB.
You're a second NFL team. As well, but all right, I appreciate that. Let me go to what's been the biggest story here, sort of regarding ESPN for a couple of weeks. I was actually, I don't have YouTube TV. I have Verizon Fios, so I wanted the dispute to last into this podcast so I could get like fine information and all that stuff. But you guys settled it. What I find interesting about it is, well, first of all, I was shocked to learn. So I didn't know until this happened that YouTube TV has 10 million subscribers. My guess is, from what I saw during this whole thing, 9 million are diehard sports fans. Were you aware of how big YouTube TV seems to be in the sports world? Were you aware of that before this dispute? Because I was not.
Yeah, I was. I've sort of described them as the modern manifestation of what DirecTV used to be for sports fans. Right. And by the way, the parallel there obviously is Sunday Ticket, specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were aware of that. It's a great product. That was never, at issue here. It's a great experience for sports fans. They have the multi-view, which people love on particularly on big college football or Saturdays or NFL Sundays. yeah, we were aware of that dynamic, and I think the essence of the of the situation, or the circumstance, and the parallel I'm trying to draw really is Sunday Ticket, right? Which was,
Right.
which again, you don't literally have to have direct, you don't have to have YouTube TV per se,
Right.
but
Like me.
if you're still in the bundled channel business, and you want Sunday Ticket, why not, right? So
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I have Sunday Ticket with FiOS. Um, and I guess why not is simply I don't want to stream sports. I have no choice with Sunday Ticket, which
yeah,
leads me to sort of the resolution of the dispute where your unlimited app is now going to be part of YouTube TV. I would think the natural question then becomes, well, what about everyone? Like, when does FiOS get to do that? When does Spectrum get to do that? When does DirecTV get to do that? Or will this only be a special deal with YouTube TV?
well, there's two different things you're talking about. One is like the issue of ingestion, which is, unique to the streaming circumstance. The other the other ones you mentioned, the way that same dynamic happens is you through authentication you get access to ESPN Unlimited if your charter's a perfect example. So when we did the charter deal, part of it was that they would have access to our direct to consumer for their customers. All they had to do was authenticate as a charter customer, and they would get the same access to all of that content that anyone would, even if you just bought it from us directly
But that's on your app.
on our app. Right? Yeah.
Right. I'm looking for the day when your app is part of like Verizon FiOS, like it's going to be part of YouTube TV.
Yeah. Different technologies involved there.
Okay.
What our primary concern now across the board, and really one of the absolute driving principles of finally going direct to consumer on our app was just access, right? How can we make sure that as many people, it may not be precisely what you want, like as you're describing, Jimmy, but providing access to anybody who would want to get ESPN, a way to get ESPN. And slowly but surely our platform distribution team was clicking off deals that allowed us the right to go direct to consumer, but also provided those multi-channel customers, say Charter, for example, the same access to the same content through our app as they would get if
Right.
they bought it directly. So access is a big part of our play right now. And then as technology continues to evolve and innovate, I think you'll have a world where, in your case, FiOS would have something similar
Okay.
for their customers.
All
But
right.
in the immediate near term, access is the same for a charter customer as it is for a
Right.
YouTube customer.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like I have access to everything with
Yeah,
unlimited.
yeah.
Um, but I would love it if I can just do it through FiOS and not have to keep,
This is what I
back and
love
forth,
about
back
your
and forth.
podcast. Actually, is like I
Yeah.
love hearing exactly what you like. The world as Jimmy would want it to be
Yes.
is often
Well, I don't
comes.
want to tell you what Jimmy had to go through with your app. I'm trying to,
Yeah,
we had
thank,
some, let's just say there were a couple of problems, but
yeah,
you know what the problem was? The problem was this. I was subscribed to ESPN Plus. And because I was subscribed to ESPN Plus, Verizon FiOS had a lot of trouble authenticating me with ESPN Unlimited.
yes,
Like I had
yeah,
that was what, and I've heard from people with that. So,
yeah.
hopefully that gets straightened out over time. So, in terms of the YouTube TV situation, I, you know, it it's hard to surprise me in this day and age, but even I was a little surprised how everyone sort of took the YouTube TV side of it and blamed ESPN for everything. And we talked before too about even with Inside the NBA. Do you feel like ESPN, fair or not, has some sort of PR problem or public relations issue where sports fans are just always looking to blame ESPN for everything, whether in some cases it's warranted, in some cases it's not?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that. I mean, I think you and I both live in a world where we probably see that more frequently than because of the circles that we
Yes.
run,
Yes.
you know. So, listen, from a fan perspective, unfortunately, there's no winners in circumstances like this for the period of time. These used to be, distribution disputes used to almost never happen. Now they seem to happen with more regularity, and they seem to happen for a longer time. And in those situations, everybody's frustrated, everybody's lashing out. We receive, our fair share of that, and more in some cases. But I don't, I don't think it's a PR problem as much as it's just a frustration, and I don't, in those circumstances, I don't know that there's much that you can do about it, right? And by the way, I don't think the tactics are the same as they were even a couple years ago, right? I think a lot of the reason that maybe we received the majority of the frustration was because people like YouTube TV, they weren't looking to switch away, right? The good news is, in today's world, if you have the means, like, there's actual ways that you can do that pretty simply and pretty easily if you buy a month of this or a month of that, or go to the app or whatever. So there's solutions. It's not like you have to just sit there and bear it for the period of time. You can figure it out. But I think, in a world where YouTube TV is a good product that people are happy with and might be married to their Sunday ticket subscription, the frustration level ran high, and we understand that. And, what we were hoping for was a solution where, all of that would where everybody would win, and us and YouTube, and more importantly than anything, the fans. And so thank goodness we got to that resolution, when we did.
When is that Sunday ticket YouTube TV contract up? I think they're in the third year right now. Would that be something ESPN
I think it's the second year, honestly. It feels like longer.
Okay. Was last year the first? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, it does feel like longer.
Yeah.
Just curious if that's a product ESPN would want to jump into if the rights came up for that.
I'm pretty sure that, like everything else with the NFL, is tied together with all of their, package rights from a timing perspective. So whenever that circumstance comes from the league, everybody will be ready. We'll be ready. Yeah.
Guys, I have to tell you about Cash App. Scammers know the holidays are busy for everyone, which can make us all targets for scams. That's why Cash App builds in protection to help keep your money safe while you're checking off your shopping list. If you're about to send money to someone for a deal that's too good to be true, and Cash App flags it as a potential scam, they'll warn you before you send the money. Cash App also gives you an extra layer of protection with features like security lock. You can require a PIN, Face ID, or fingerprint to unlock your account and move money. So even if someone gets a hold of your unlocked phone at a holiday party, your money is right where you left it. Gift yourself some peace of mind this holiday season and download Cash App. For a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, just download Cash App, use our exclusive referral code SECURE10 in your profile, send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial service platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit Cash App/legal/podcast for full disclosures. With ESPN buying the NFL network, it still has to go through government something that I'm, not going to get into here. But Do you guys, it's been a little while now since that was announced. Do you have a plan for what you want to do with all of that content coming over to ESPN?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. One is that unfortunately the government approval filter on this thing is not insignificant. It severely limits sort of the depth by which we can involve ourselves in the business for a period of time. There's all kinds of gun jumping provisions that limit, the how much we can influence what's happening there.
Let me interrupt you for a second. Is there any sort of time frame on when that government issue would be settled?
Yeah, well, there's no, not specifically, but there's some real NFL related timing that will drive, whether it happens for the 26th season or whether it happens for the 20, because because you track on this stuff, the NFL builds their schedule starting after the Super Bowl and it's ready to go in like early May, right? And so, if it's not approved by then, they have to build a schedule as if the NFL Network is still theirs and not ours. Right. Because remember, when we take control of it, like things are going to happen, like the doubleheaders will go away, and like the scheduling for both our games and their games changes, and so they're not going to build a schedule for both eventualities if right. The NFL Network's not going to be approved by then. So that's not a government deadline, but that's just an NFL deadline, right?
Correct. Right.
And right. if that's the case, then even though the deal will close sometime thereafter, we will have to go through the 26 regular season will be the same as it's been for the last couple of years.
Gotcha. So you don't know, for instance, like on November 25th, what you're going to do with Good Morning Football, for instance. Like, no. You can't think that far ahead.
No.
Gotcha.
No.
Gotcha.
I mean, we have a lot of thoughts generally. And by the way, this is a great problem for us to have is, when we dive in and really start thinking about, how we combine these two things in many ways, even though they'll continue to be obviously separate networks. What I hope is it's a 1 + 1 = 3 situation. They have a ton of talented voices over there. We obviously do too. They cover the NFL. It's a 24/7 endeavor pretty much for both of us at this point, year round coverage of this league that is so popular, and commands so much attention every day, all day. That's going to be, a really exciting exercise to see how, we can take the best of what they do and the best of what we do, create some overlaps, and accrue to the benefit of NFL fans over time. Like, listen, Good Morning Football is probably, in my estimation, is the greatest success story on the NFL Network, period. And so, so that's an exciting proposition to figure out what that looks like going forward and how they can contribute to what we do and vice versa.
Right. Could we expect to see like talent crossover possibly? Like, would we see Schefter maybe doing something on NFL Network?
I think for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
We don't want to blend them to such a degree that their identities, start to meld.
Right.
I think the NFL Network has a very different brand and a very different voice in many ways. And we think that we like that. They think that's important. Take the draft, for instance. I think what we do on the NFL draft and what they do on the NFL draft is not, identical. And I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I think it stands to reason that obviously we would, talent would flow in both directions.
Got it. All right. And then NFL, you said it earlier, the doubleheaders are going to go away. I think from what I saw, they were going away. And then I think maybe someone said maybe they're not going to go away. And I'm using the word doubleheader just because I know sometimes they're staggered. Yeah. Sometimes they're side by side. Sometimes they are a doubleheader, but I'm just using the word doubleheader as 2 games on a Monday night.
Right.
Is that definitely over?
When the NFL Network is fully, under our control and the deal is closed, yes. So we'd go back to one game a week on Monday Night Football, and then there'd be a schedule of games on NFL Network. So yeah, that's part of the construct.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you about some people, some talent at ESPN that have made headlines for whatever reason, and sort of get some scoop on that. 5 o'clock Around the Horn was canceled. There was a report, I think it was Marchand, that Scott Van Pelt talks of him leaving the midnight SportsCenter, going to 5 o'clock. Let me start with this, just out of curiosity, as the president of ESPN. Do you view the value different, 5 o'clock, midnight? Like, if you moved Scott to 5, are you hurting midnight in a way that would, or it's worth it to get him at 5? Forget Scott from a lifestyle standpoint. I would assume anyone would want 5 over midnight, but I'm just curious about, in terms of value for those two time slots, how you view it.
Yeah. I mean, if that comes to pass at 5 o'clock, we're thinking of it. We would like to have a little bit of both, worlds. Obviously the contemplation at 5 o'clock is a daily show, right? But in addition to that, again, I'll just use Scott as an example here. This is not finalized or anything close to that, but you know how we feel about him. Obviously he's, at the very peak of our talent roster. But if 5 o'clock happens, Scott would continue to do, let's take Mondays, for example. He'd continue to do a Monday Night Countdown on the NFL. And since he's there, he would also continue to do SportsCenter after Monday Night Football. So we would like there to be, I don't know what the number would be, but we'd like there to be a bunch of those nights throughout the year where Scott would continue to do midnight after the biggest events on the sports calendar, whether they were ours or something else, and that would be the best. That would be like the best outcome possible, right? Where we're getting him to do a new show at 5 o'clock, but it wouldn't eliminate completely his presence in a late night SportsCenter environment. It would be restricted to likely Monday nights during NFL season, and then a handful of other events throughout the year, other nights throughout the year where the night was just so enormous that you want Scott Van Pelt doing SportsCenter. Think about after the NBA Finals, for example,
right?
After World Series nights, after Stanley Cup nights, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you have, in addition to Scott, do you have a list of people in your head who you would possibly want for that 5 p.m. slot? Like, when do you think a decision would be made on the 5 p.m. slot?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. But I'm
not going to ask you who, but how many people are on the list?
It's a short list. Short.
Okay.
But at this point, you know how we typically think about the sports calendar. And remember, every day, I said it to Marchand because he had the Scott piece of it, and we're not trying to hide anything here, right? By any stretch. This is not like the nuclear launch codes or anything like that. So, what I said to him was, we currently have the luxury of the fact that the SportsCenter half hour that we put at 5 o'clock is doing very well, better than Around the Horn, and kind of truly creates this weird dynamic where, pardon the interruption, literally is interrupting SportsCenter, because then it continues at 6 o'clock.
Right.
So we have it pretty good with the way it is now, and every month that goes by, we continue to get Scott doing the late night show, which is really, really important and valuable to us that he likes doing. He's not asking off of that show, by the way.
Right.
So we're going to continue to roll that for a while we not only figure out the talent, but also figure out the creative format and conceit of what that half hour show is.
That was my next question, was will the type of show it is change depending on who the host is, or do you have an idea of what you want that show to be?
No, I think it changes depending on who it is. We want it to be like, we'll continue to use Scott. If it's Scott, I want it to be very much like Scott Van Pelt, his show.
Right.
He could easily have a partner, or or a cohort in it, but it would reflect him and his sensibilities. So, but we have to figure that part out too. So, long story short, we've got some time. SportsCenter's doing well. I would suspect we would use as much time as possible, and then maybe do like we do with so many other things, launch around football season in 26.
Got it. All right. Well, that's good too, since Scott's off for the whole summer. I love
Yeah,
you, Scott, but I
we'd
just
have
had
to
to
do
throw
it
that in there. Yeah.
from Dewey Beach,
Yeah.
Delaware.
Yeah. Scott, if Scott gets that time slot, those July and August days might not be so,
Yeah.
PTO-ish. All right, let me go to this. There was a whole thing with First Take and Molly Qerim, which was abrupt. And what came out of it is that Molly was going to be eventually at some point moved off of First Take. And maybe that triggered. And then there was a statement. She didn't like the statement, came out. She left. Why was she going to be moved off First Take when the perception of First Take, at least from a number standpoint, not a perception, reality is the numbers are very good. Why would you mess with something that works?
I think the simplest answer to that was, and I in no way I want to speak for Molly, who I really, really like a lot, but I think the sense is that it was time. All of these things have a shelf life. She wanted to do other things. I think she probably most likely wanted to do them in addition to First Take. We were thinking, maybe a fresh look for somebody on First Take and other things and different things for Molly. There really is no, I said this in the moment, there really is no controversy here. I would have loved to have kept her. She's a wonderful human being. She was incredible on that show for a decade. But what she wanted and what we wanted just wasn't the same. The only abruptness to it was, frankly, I think it would have been very difficult and very unfair once we both came to the same realization to have her continue to do First Take as a lame duck in a lame duck situation for 3 months, and so that was the only thing. Like we weren't looking to hustle her out of the building or anything like that. She leaves in good standing. I would love to work with her again, honestly, in some form or fashion. But it was just one of those moments where there just wasn't common ground there, and I think she's going to be really successful outside of ESPN, and maybe we work together again someday.
All right, let me go to probably the two biggest people right now at ESPN, and they're constantly finding themselves in controversies, which is Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith. Just from your perspective, I'm trying to think about how to phrase this where I don't want it to sound the way it's going to sound, but I'm trying to think of the wording. I was going to say, who's a bigger headache? What I mean by that, though, is in terms of like you get a ding on your phone and one of them is wrapped up in some sort of controversy. Are you like, do you brush it off because you're paying these guys a lot of money? They produce big numbers. Do you think the controversies are good for ESPN? Do you wish they didn't happen?
I think the fundamental disconnect here with the way we think about things and the way it gets reported externally is that, and especially this stuff most recently, like we don't think of it as controversies, like
I'm saying Pat ripping a game day producer on his show. You don't consider that a controversy?
Well, I don't think he ripped a game day producer. I think he just felt frustrated, with this, and it's no different than how he's felt for, since he came over here. He's trying to fit himself into a corporate environment, which is really challenging for a guy who's been an innovator, and a mold breaker and by the way, whose instincts in that regard have gotten him all of the success that he's had to date.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
just for the record, I'm not knocking it. I like Pat, and I think I like when he does that, especially from a content standpoint, and I find that amusing too. I'm just saying, I would imagine the ESPN higher ups might not love him bringing behind the scenes issues onto his show.
Yeah, I mean, it stands to reason, right? I mean, for sure, but we're now several years into this, and we have a great working relationship with him. When something like that happens, it's an easy conversation. Think of it in sports terms, right? The old, like, keep it in the locker room kind of dynamic, right? Where, where you'd rather not take stuff outside the family, of that nature. But it's maybe hard for folks to understand, but he really doesn't mean it with any intent to harm, right? It's frustration just kind of comes out of him at times, as does like all the joy and humor and enthusiasm that he has for sports. That seems to me that's who he is as a human being, and that's what makes him great. Mm-hmm. So, I guess that's the line we walk, and that's why I figure it's, or the way we sort of approach it is that it's not a controversy. Is it something that has to be managed both internally and externally and communicated, right. And the great part is that the team we have working with him, is really understands this, and we're managing, or trying to work with, I don't want to say we're managing him, but we're trying to work with a supremely talented guy who is breaking the mold and frankly is creating a new paradigm for sports entertainment in real time, in front of our eyes. And
yeah, go ahead.
So no, I want to walk the line here because I'm incredibly supportive of Pat and what he does. I think he's been incredibly net positive for ESPN in so many ways. I mean, just look at College Game Day, for example. The great Lee Corso retires. We haven't missed a beat. We're 25% above last year's ratings, which was the highest viewed, season ever for College Game Day. And now we're 25% above that. We've got, he's created new franchises like the field goal kicking contest. His open now, a la Saturday Night Live, is kind of must watch television. Like he has been so great for us that we don't want to get distracted by things that frankly are easy to deal with.
The reason I brought up the game day comment was, and this is really inside baseball, but I find it fascinating, is that, you're dealing with two Pats, because the Pat who has the daily show, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you guys don't have a ton of say in that because it's Pat's show and you guys license it. It's not an ESPN show.
No, that's right. Yeah, it is.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
But then you have game day where you can, I was going to say control for lack of a better word, but game day, he does work for you for game day. Yeah. So you've got two different worlds going on there. And I feel like I could see where he's gotten in trouble with the show here and there for whatever reason, and I say trouble in quotes because it's not real trouble, but the show has generated usually the controversies. Game day has not. My perspective as someone who covers this is that everything, like you said, has gone totally swimmingly with game day because Lee left and the numbers are great. Everyone has big numbers this year because of the Nielsen thing, but the show still seems as popular as ever, as relevant as ever, no matter what Fox wants to do. They can't really put a dent in it. So I was surprised when he came out and had some negative things to say about the game day sort of higher up. So that was sort of my, where I wanted to go with that.
I see what you're saying, but he's one person. He's Yeah, I understand the line you're drawing, and like from a purely business perspective,
Yeah.
it is different. But we have one relationship with one guy, and you know, he's been the net positive has been
Yeah.
incredible to us on both of those circumstances. So, it continues to be an ongoing conversation with him, but we're nowhere near it being a controversy inside
Right.
ESPN, right?
Got it.
Like,
Yep.
I just want that to be clear because,
Yep.
like, the other thing that exists here is, and I'm not trying to swat it aside or make it sound irrelevant, but like, the news cycle that lives off the backs of these kinds of things that drags on for days upon days, among those outlets, we all know who they are, who have fashioned a business around commenting on ESPN and in many cases manufacturing a controversy that doesn't actually exist, at least internally, is
Right.
is part of the issue here. Like, just because it gets said 10 times on X over a week span doesn't make it different to us,
Right. Right. And I think the field goal kicking contest should end game day. Like you said, you like when you come on because I give you the world of Jimmy. If I was producing game day, that would be the end of game day, but because sometimes I'm running around at 10 o'clock in the morning trying to get everything done to be in the chair by noon. And I always would get in that chair by 11:50 to watch Lee put on the headgear.
Yeah.
But now I want the field goal kicking contest. So it is tremendous television, that field goal.
It really is. And by the way, another thing that nobody believes, a la inside the NBA, is it's 100% his money. Like,
right.
That is the truth. Like,
Well, I had Kirk on a couple of months ago, and he said that Pat offers up Herb Streep's money, and Kirk doesn't even know it sometimes. So
I think he threw $250 on the table for Herbie. I'm not sure what kind of conversation happened about that.
And another thing people seem to not believe is this week, people seem to believe that Stephen A got fired from NBA Countdown.
Right.
Which, if you want to just chime in and explain that, and then we could get to Stephen A.
Stephen A did the best job of anyone explaining that situation when he addressed it, I think, on his platform. But it was not contemplated as part of his new deal. We have the ability to put him on that show from time to time. He's doing considerably more outside of ESPN than he was in his prior circumstance, which limits the amount of time he has to do other things. The primary driver for our relationship with him and our contractual negotiations was First Take by far, by leaps and bounds. But we have the ability to put him on different things. He wants to do different things. We've had him on Monday Night Countdown a couple times. I think he's on one more time from an NFL perspective. I'm sure you'll see him on NBA Countdown throughout the year as well. But it was there's talk about no controversy. There's just nothing there. There's no there. I guess we could have come out proactively and said and clarified that for people when, prior to announcing, the new lineup, but that was not I wish it was in the deal, frankly.
Hey. Is there a fear at all at ESPN of Stephen A becoming more known for politics than sports?
No, I wouldn't describe it as a fear. I think politics is fraught with peril. I think from a brand perspective, both for him primarily, but also for us, because I think we have to be realistic about despite having a sort of a clear demarcation of on platform or off platform or on ESPN versus off ESPN, I think just given the time he's served in a capacity for us, the idea that he's not ESPN's Stephen A. Smith still is we have to be realistic about how people are going to separate those two things in their mind.
Not.
Yeah, that's what I mean by being realistic about it, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a danger zone. I think he's really, really good at it. Um, and he has an interesting perspective and point of view, and he's informed. Um, but I'm glad, I'm glad we were able to separate, his sports work for us with the other things that he's doing.
Do you guys like that he does so much, or would you maybe want him? Like, I don't know. Do you ever have a fear of like overexposure? It does seem like there's not a minute that goes by where he's not doing something or making headlines or something, which I guess if he's making headlines or something at the end of the day, that's probably good for ESPN. But, there's also a less is more type of theory that goes on in this business.
Yeah. And listen, as long as the quality and level of his work on First Take is, to the degree it's always been, which it is, as we sit here today, I'm not that concerned about overexposure. There's a school of thought that says the more politics he's doing, the more people will understand that's him, not us. As opposed to popping up infrequently.
Right. Right.
But either way, I look at it through the First Take lens. That's his primary role for us. Is the show as good and entertaining as it's always been? Is it doing fun and innovative things like going to HBCUs or doing the show from Dallas before Monday Night Football in a packed, environment? Is he continuing to intrigue and engage sports fans? Yeah, he's doing all of that. So we're good.
Because I'm thinking that politics will probably even ramp up even more as we get closer to like another election, but we'll see what happens when that happens. Speaking of politics, I'm sure you love this subject, but got to ask you about Paul Finebaum because, just as someone who observes this stuff, you can sort of tell what's good. Like I can tell Scott's going to get the 5 p.m. SportsCenter. I can tell Paul Finebaum is going to leave ESPN. I mean, it seems if you just watch what he says, hear what he says. Now, Stephen A. has managed to do the politics, stay at ESPN. Obviously, if Paul Finebaum went into like a political office, that would be a little different.
That's a different job. Yeah.
Could you figure out a way though, where like he could work at ESPN on Saturdays on, the SEC network while he's running for office, or it has to be a clean cut with Paul if he decides to go that route?
Yeah. I don't.
How big of a blow will that be for ESPN to lose Paul?
Yeah. I don't think that, by the way, I don't know that would be fair to the people of Alabama who he's supposed to be serving.
Right.
But in that capacity, but no, I don't, well, there's two parts of it. Like there's the running for office part of it. And then there's if he gets, the nomination and ultimately elected. And if he's a U.S. senator, if he's a U.S. senator, I don't think so. And frankly, I'm not sure that would be a good thing to wish for, but, he'd have a whole lot of work, in front of him like they all do. But, what was the other part of it? Like
losing him, how much of a blow?
Losing him.
Yeah. Guys?
No, he does. He's bedrock to the SEC network. He does 4 hours of radio and television a day on the SEC network. He does SEC Nation. He's, he's an incredible voice for national college football as well. It would be a loss. And he's been there since day one of the SEC network. So,
right.
It would definitely be a loss. But that's what happens in our business. So like we've already started thinking about what it would look like without him. We're not enthusiastic about that right now. But we also, I don't feel as confident as you do, I guess, and that he's actually going to do it, but we'll see. I don't have a good handle on it.
Yeah. I'm just like, you observe how someone says something, how, what they say. If I was a betting man, and I would bet that he leaves. But listen, I think also you can make that decision to leave. And then when you're about to make that decision, you could then get that sort of thing that pops in your head about how just disgusting and vile politics is. And then maybe you change your mind at the last minute.
Yeah. And by the way, he's in
college football in the SEC is only slightly less vile and disturbing than politics, but it's still less.
Well, listen, I do want to clarify one thing. Paul is in good standing here. Like if he decided to go do this, and he wanted to come back, or he didn't get the nomination, or whatever the case may be, like, there's a chair for him, under every circumstance, with the exception of if he's a U.S. senator,
Yeah.
And that's only because, I don't think that's feasible. But like, there was a little dust up with him, that we were somehow putting him on the shelf, because he was even contemplating running, and that wasn't the case. By the way, he missed a grand total of one show that he would have normally been scheduled for, and I think that was really just sort of an overzealous person trying to get ready for the new world order, if in fact he wasn't going to be here.
Right.
So anyway, we love Paul. I know this is a difficult decision for him. He and I have been in touch, periodically. It's his decision entirely. But if he decides not to do it, we motor on with him, and that would be a great outcome too.
All right, let me get to some business type of things here before. Well, let me start. Because I was going to ask you about MLB TV, but you're back in baseball. But you never left, but you'll have a weeknight MLB game.
Yeah.
Is it? Do you know yet? Are you bringing back the crew you had of Ravitch and Cone and Eduardo Perez, or could you tinker with that booth? Do you know what you're doing?
We don't know, and we could tinker. For example, Cone's availability with Yes Network was, I think, primarily based on the fact that it was Sunday Night Baseball. Right. So I don't know about that situation exactly, but we love the booth we have right now. We think it's pretty good, really good. But the weekday dynamic, and the fact that it's actually beyond just being weekdays, it's not regular weekdays necessarily. I think the preponderance of them will be Wednesdays, but they're kind of all over the place. So we're gonna look at it. We've got some really good voices that you see, like when we've done the wild card rounds, where there's a lot of games over a short period of time, that we could explore. And there's a decent amount of new talent out there that I think will be interesting to us and to the other new players in terms of Netflix and NBC specifically.
All right, so now ESPN has the rights to MLB.TV, meaning if someone wants the MLB I always say the MLB package, but MLB.TV, you can access it starting next season on the ESPN app.
Correct.
The unlimited app.
Yep.
Do we have any idea of the pricing for that package?
No, I don't believe that's been determined yet. If it has, I don't know it.
Okay. Because that's important.
Yeah.
We talked about baseball. You'll have those 30 games. You'll have MLB.TV. You guys also do a ton with the WNBA, air a lot of games, finals, everything, playoffs. Those two sports, we keep hearing about possible work stoppages. Do you worry about that, or is it out of your hands and you can't worry about it? Or because especially the WNBA, you guys do a ton with that. Baseball, It's once a week, but if you have the MLB TV and that gets wiped out. So do those talks make you nervous?
I think it would be foolish not to be concerned with potential work stoppages. There, in terms of business arrangements, there's, it's pretty commonplace to have there be, work stoppage, provisions in a media agreement, but you hope you never get to that, because that's, half a loaf at best. But you really have to be prepared mostly for what replacement programming or content you would put in place of would have otherwise been there. So yeah, the short answer is yes. We pay close attention to it, and we hope that it never gets to that with either of those leagues.
You have a deal now with WWE. I'm blown away by how much you guys promote those WWE. People on all the shows. You really went all out for. Was it WrestleMania the first one, or was it SummerSlam?
It was.
SummerSlam.
WrestlePalooza.
WrestlePalooza. Right.
and
Yeah.
Survivor Series Saturday
Yeah.
night.
What are your impressions of working with the WWE and how that deal has gone on? Again, another thing where you need the ESPN Unlimited app
Yeah.
to access those events. How has that all gone? Has it gone smoothly? Do you need improvements anywhere? What's going on with that deal?
It's gone great so far. Obviously we're very familiar with Nick Khan and the team over there. We've had engagement with them for years in much smaller ways, but they're fantastic to work with. They really hustle on behalf of their property. Those appearances don't just happen unless you have a league that's willing to make all those people available and fly them around and make sure they that they get there and do that. The superstars are highly engaged in promoting both themselves, but also the broader WWE and their stories. So it's been really good so far. We're looking forward to WrestleMania this year, which would be our first. But we've had 2 PLEs to date. One of them was in the Middle East, so it was on an off hour. WrestlePalooza was new, and so Survivor Series this weekend actually will be a really good measuring stick for how it's going. But in terms of the interaction between the team at WWE and us, it's been great.
I will say there are a few things in sports more jarring than listening to Joe Tess call a game on a Saturday afternoon and then 48 hours listening to call Monday Night Raw. I still haven't gotten used to that, I must say.
Yeah,
But
it's good that he has
perfect
another
for that.
I was going to say it's good that he has another outlet for his boundless enthusiasm.
Yeah. Let me wrap it with this. There was a few weeks ago, big news, I guess, is ESPN Bet was done. You're back with DraftKings. It seems like, ESPN Bet has gone through a couple of, I guess, incarnations now. The Penn has been a disaster. Ultimately, you make a deal with DraftKings. What are you looking for? What do you want, from a deal with a sports book?
Well, in this case, I think the most important thing was the connection between us and the market leader in the space, right? The approach we took with Penn, while financially very advantageous to us in terms of licensing the ESPN brand for that product, at the end of the day, it was Penn's product, not, and the difference here now is it's actually a better financial deal for us. So that's a great improvement over the situation. But we get to put our shoulder behind, the market leader essentially with, FanDuel and DraftKings are so far ahead of everybody else that it's really a 2-horse race at this point. And we feel like, and it's kind of commonly accepted that DraftKings product is the best. And so that was always the disconnect is, for us is we put all of our effort and time behind pushing ESPN Bet and promoting ESPN Bet, but we were ultimately driving people to a product that wasn't as good as the market leaders. And the only way that you're going to gain market share was for that to improve. And it also honestly gets our brand out of the middle of it. Which was hard for the casual fans or the general public to understand, how we were involved or not involved in the first place. Right. This will be simple, right? This is DraftKings. It's not going to say ESPN Bet. It's not going to carry ESPN's brand. We're promoting DraftKings. Our association is with them. And we get a better financial deal as a result. So it was a great outcome for us.
Yeah. I thought you guys took such an unfair hit on that day that Chauncey Billup news broke and the ESPN logo was on the scroll. Like that scroll is pre-programmed, and the fact that people like, I don't know. I work for Sports Illustrated, and I get annoyed by all of these fake ESPN controversies. I can't imagine what you go through on a day-to-day basis. Like I see stuff and I'm just like, this is such bullshit. I don't know how people, and then everyone, right? I don't know. I find it exhausting. I don't know how you guys do it.
Well, in this case too, as you well know, there's not a league or a team or a media company or entity that doesn't have some kind of relationship with, including the people, the people that were criticizing us,
right,
that don't have a relationship with a sports book in the era of legalized sports betting, right? So, I'm with you, but the reason we're so excited about DraftKings is that it puts the two of us together. It's, it's going to be, an incredibly powerful combination, but we're going to leave the sports book part of it to DraftKings, and we're going to smartly integrate them into our content and market and promote that fact, in ways that have become table stakes for serious sports fans. Like betting information for us, our research has told us this over and over and over again. Like betting information, us being a destination for that content is not a nice to have. It's like it's an expected part of what we do. And so we're going to be doing it anyway. We might as well hook up with the market leader, get it on better financial terms, and really be able to drive both our businesses simultaneously to a whole new level.
It seems like there should be some sort of DraftKings, Scott Van Pelt, Bad Beats, some sort of partnership, something you guys can do there.
Maybe at 5 o'clock.
That's what I'm looking forward to. I want Bad Beats at 5 o'clock. I always have to find. Thank God Stanford Steve tweets it out the next day because I can never find it. You guys need to promote that better. There's the last Jimmy request from the podcast. Please promote Bad Beats in a better way.
Okay. All right.
Don't listen to what all these people say who freak out about gambling.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't. I'm not even a bettor, and I don't freak out.
It's so stupid. All right, Burke, appreciate it. You got Thanksgiving coming up here. What we got? ESPN. We've got, all right, so NBA's rolling. You got Monday Night Football. How's the Monday night schedule the rest of the way? Do we have a flex coming up, you think? Do you guys have that Miami-Pittsburgh game? Who has that game?
No flex. We do have that game.
Flex it.
Yeah, I don't know. Steelers are still in the mix, right?
Barely. I can't watch the Dolphins.
On Monday, I'm going to Foxborough for Giants-Patriots, which, I guess before the season I would have said that the two teams combined would have 12 wins going in. I didn't think the Patriots were going to have 10 of those 12.
The Patriots have well, let me ask you this, since I'm just thinking out loud here. It's not your network.
Yeah.
Can CBS get $50 million on Thanksgiving for Chiefs Cowboys?
Yeah, I think they could.
You can't have a better matchup from a ratings perspective in the NFL.
No, you can't. Right. And I mean, that comeback by the Cowboys on Sunday was remarkable. And I think that just throws them into another level of interest for every game down the pike, because it's seemingly they need to win, they need to keep winning. And so, I think it could be.
I'm sure your CBS counterparts are doing a dance on Sunday because they got the Chiefs with the comeback against the Colts, and then the Cowboys come back to beat the Eagles. That game set up for Thanksgiving now should be pretty good. I just look, you guys have a good Monday night schedule the rest of the way. That Miami-Pittsburgh game seems to be the big hunker, but I guess the Steelers, people are into the Steelers.
The Colt, we got a good Colts game. What is that?
Yeah, against the Niners. Against the Niners.
Yeah.
That's a good game.
Yeah, I like that game.
Yep. All right, Burke, appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Have a great Thanksgiving, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
All right, you got it, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thanks.